BOCC work session. It's January 24th, 2012. It's 1:30 in the afternoon. This is an unusually late start, but we don't have much on our agenda today. The first item is the Agricultural Committee discussion, and I think that means that we're going to try to form and appoint our Agricultural Committee. So,
and I can take this,
okay.
Michael. The board has now interviewed 5 candidates for our new agricultural review committee, and at this point, that is a 5-member board. Staff is prepared to seat that board and would like to get that board seated so that we can address any permits that may be coming in as construction season, believe it or not, given all the snow, could be right around the corner. And so we want to be sure that we're getting that board seated and oriented as to kind of their responsibilities and how they're going to work. And so attached, you have the applications and resumes of the 5 applicants, and staff is seeking guidance as to whether you would like to appoint any of these applicants and whether we should be continuing to advertise.
Okay, thank you, John. Board, what kind of guidance do you have? George?
I think I'm ready to appoint, and my question is, in terms of the process, do you just want to look at these one at a time, or do you want me to just throw out my candidates? How do you want to do this, Michael?
I think any form is fine. We've got 5 candidates, right, and it's a 5-member board. So, but it takes a minimum of 3 to form a quorum. So we could appoint anywhere from 3 to 5, or not appoint and keep this going forever. So, George?
Well, I'll just throw out my comments, just start the discussion. But overall, I feel that we've got a very good group that have applied. They represent a broad geographic distribution from Old Snowmass to Emma to the Crystal River Valley, which I think is good. And they also bring different interests in terms of their agricultural background, from cattle to equestrian to large land management. And so, given all that, I'm comfortable in terms of appointing Rio Jacober, who is a cattle rancher from the Crystal River Valley. I thought he was a strong applicant and great background. Mike Thomas, who is a land manager for the a large ranch subdivision. I think he'll bring a different point of view. Steve Child, of course, another rancher from the Old Snowmass area for cattle. Robert Petrock, who is in the Emma area, whose background is ag and has an equestrian interest. Jason Sewell I was not that impressed with, and since we have Rio, at least in my mind, from the Crystal River Valley, I would appoint Rio over Jason. I thought Jason has sort of a weak resume in terms of his interests and his overall application. So those are my 4 choices.
Jack? Rob?
I thought I saw Rob's hand up first, but I'll go. I would absolutely agree with George. I like his first 4 picks. I do not know Jason Sewell, but he interviewed very poorly. And it seemed like we're supposed to infer, because his family has been on the property for 130 years, that he is a good steward of the land, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm not supportive of appointing him, and I do like the idea of trying to have a representative from caucuses, and we've mostly done that with these 4. So I concur with George's, without mentioning the names. It should be pretty obvious.
Rob, how do you feel?
I had the same list down for the same exact reasons. I will ask the question, though, just to refresh our memory on the Agricultural Review Committee, these are how long appointments? Are we going to try to stagger these appointments so not all the applicants are coming up? I.e., are some of these going to be one-year appointments and some two-year appointments, or some other variation of time frame? And I'd like to see it get to a 5-person board, so I'll say at this point, too, I think we should continue advertising for the 5th slot as well, if that's the direction that we go in with those 4 applicants. Yeah, and I apologize, Rob, I do not have the appointment schedule right in front of me right now, but the intention would be to stagger the appointments so that we don't have everyone up at once, but to stagger them 3, and I believe they're 4-year terms. Okay, let me email and make sure I can get the right information. So there are going to be some that will be longer terms and some that are shorter. Yeah, and so I'd imagine what we'd envision is 3 for 4-year terms and then 2 for 2-year, but let me double check those terms real quick.
Well, it sounds like the board's ready to go ahead and make the appointment of 4, and we'll just say to be staggered. Right? Is the board concerned about that particulars of that staggering right now, or can we go ahead and do it?
Well, I would like to see, and I have to admit that I know the individual fairly well versus the others, but I would request that Steve Child be put on for 4 years, one of the longer ones, for not only his basic knowledge of the things I think all of them know about, but his family also was the first to step up to the plate and deal with the big conservation easements, etc. And so he really understands that piece also, and not saying anything about the others' knowledge of that issue.
Is that okay with the rest of the board? Give Steve a long term? Did you hear that, John?
Yes.
Okay, so John, you have the names of the 4 that George mentioned?
Yes. We have the appointment of Rio Jacober, Mike Thomas, Steve Child, and Robert Petrock up for consideration.
Okay. So if the board's will is to appoint those 4, with Steve Childs being a long-termer.
And a thank you letter to the other individual.
Absolutely. And I apologize, they are 2-year terms that will be staggered, either 2 years or 1 year. So we'll clarify that when we bring the resolution back.
Okay.
Only 1 year? 1 year seems pretty short.
Well, they're 2-year terms that they get appointed to, so if we're going to stagger them, but they can always apply for reappointment.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you said that 1 term was going to be a 4-year term.
I apologize, George. I emailed just to double check that.
Okay.
I thought it was a 4-year term. I was mistaken. It's actually a 2-year term for the Agricultural Advisory Committee.
Yes, Jeff.
I guess when we created the enabling legislation, that's what we did. Would it take a resolution to amend that? After all of this application and what people are going to put into it, I would almost feel, with of course concurrence, we ought to probably start at 4, do 4 in 2 years. It just, I think we have really qualified people, and it just seems like, wow, before they blink their eyes, here we have 1 year gone by. I know that's, at least for me, a year goes.
Yeah. We would need to bring that back to you and have a resolution making that change, but that's something that obviously is easy for staff to do at the board's direction.
So how does the board feel about that? Is a 4-year term, is that?
I think reappointment is easy enough. I don't see the need to change it, just because I think they're going to come by and reapply, and this gives them the opportunity, because it's a new board, if it's just not the right thing for them, they cannot reapply. I'm more protecting them than I guess us, and it's pretty easy for them to reapply and for us to approve that reapplication. And then if someone realizes that they didn't know exactly what they were getting into, they can get off. Let's hope that's not the case, but I don't see the need to change it at this point.
George?
I would probably just go with 2-year terms. I'm not sure there's a need to do,
All twos?
a need to do a staggered on this. And I thought, Suzanne, maybe you can answer a question. I thought that we were going to revisit the ag code. Was that the ag new code? We were going to revisit it a year or two, or the...
I think it ended up, we put it a little farther out than that, just because we figured it needed time to see what happened. So I think it ended up at maybe a 4-year, that we would look back at that whole provision.
But anyway, that's what I would throw out, just a 2-year term for everyone, and not staggered.
Okay, so it sounds like we'll just keep with a 2-year term. We won't have a 1-year term, first term for some of them. And we'll see at the end of 2 years. We can change it then, Jack, if it looks.
No, I'm comfortable anyway. I was just thinking, we really have some strong people. We do it.
And, let me just say that I deeply appreciate everybody coming forward, doing those interviews. They're always difficult for people to sit in front of the board and the public board and have essentially a job interview for a volunteer position. That takes a lot of courage, essentially, to do that, and a lot of community commitment. So I really deeply appreciate it. So thank you, John.
Thank you.
So, and thank you, Suzanne, for being here.
All that work.
We have a citizen board interview at 2. Seems to me we could go to future agendas right now.
We could, I was going to have Cindy come in for future agendas. I wonder if I might cover some open discussion updates and questions along
Do you
those
want me to
lines.
give her a call and let her know that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
I know she was over there.
Okay. And hopefully Cindy will be able to make it over quickly. So the first update I want to give you is that at our last meeting, you had directed staff to pursue a change in the appointment process for the BOCC library members. And as you may recall, we had 2 options, which was, one option was to essentially continue doing what we've been doing, which is to ratify the appointments of the library board. The other was to approach the entities that originally made up the library district, being Basalt, Eagle County, and Pickens County, about appointing a committee to review applications and make appointments. I have had a chance to visit with Bill Kane from Basalt, and they're interested in having that discussion. Still working on Eagle County. I do have a lunch set up with Keith Montag, the Eagle County manager, on Thursday, so I'll be able to get back to you on that. All the entities, again, have to agree, so as soon as I have an update from Eagle County, I'll let you know.
So does Bill have to get back to his board? Is that what he's going to do?
Yeah, Bill hasn't talked to his council yet. His sense is they, similar to us, have wanted to make a change in the appointment process, and they're looking to use the same methodology that they use for their other boards and commissions. Understanding that that's not possible, the appointing committee seemed to be the next best option, and so he felt that that would be a productive discussion on their end. Okay.
Are there any questions for John? Just continue.
Okay. The other item is actually one that may fall under future agendas, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the board retreat that's scheduled for February 2nd and 3rd. You may recall that we were working with the Headwaters Institute to put some socioeconomic data together for us, and then there's a scheduling problem where Ben Alexander is not going to be able to do the presentation on the 2nd when we had said it. He did email me this morning, and and indicated that he'd be available to do a webinar on the 1st, which is Wednesday, which we could do Wednesday afternoon. And what I wanted to throw out for discussion purposes is, would there be any interest on the board's part? Because I do think there'd be some value in hearing from Ben as an economist and the person that's put this together. Wednesday is an off day for us. We could schedule in this room a webinar with Ben on Wednesday afternoon and basically shorten our retreat hours on that Friday then, so that we'd spend 2.5 hours in here in the afternoon getting the socioeconomic profile, giving you some time to digest that information going into the retreat, and then on Thursday go into our agendas we had discussed with looking at our working agreements, looking at our evaluation of 2011, and then going into our discussion of goals and priorities. Wanted to throw out there, see if there's any interest in us trying to reschedule that retreat so that we could get the information from Ben directly. I have not heard from Rachel or on Rachel's calendar yet.
So tell me how the webinar works.
So how the webinar would work is we would actually log in. Ben will have a PowerPoint basically, or a presentation put together that will come through on our projector. He would be then on a speakerphone setup, and so he would in essence be doing the presentation, and we'd be able to stop and ask questions and have a dialogue with him as he's going through the socioeconomic profile that he's put together. The advantage I see to that is that you get an opportunity to kind of see what trends he's pulled out as being significant for this narrative of what is our new normal here in Pickens County, and what's changed, what's stayed the same, where do trends seem to be going. And you can enter into a dialogue with him then to ask some questions and whatnot. So, Michael, it'd be a lot like any presentation that we have in this room where we're presenting information up on the screen. It's just that the presenter will be on the telephone. And we'd have to obviously moderate to have somebody stopping them and saying, no, we've got a question, versus visual cues.
So how does the board feel about that? Jack? George?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my hands around this. John, did we haven't seen a draft agenda, right? I don't have anything like that.
We looked at a draft agenda.
I saw something, but
a couple weeks back, and you'd made some recommendations, and it's certainly something we'll be. I actually was putting one together when I got this phone call today, and so wanted to see if we should redo it, quite frankly, based on the opportunity to possibly have Ben present directly to you.
yeah, my gut feeling is I'd like to have him here present, and I don't mind rescheduling. I think an interactive session with someone here plays better than, the media type presentations. I think this would be valuable, at this time, and basically with the new normal, trying to figure out where we and the community are going. So I actually like the idea of having him present.
And so you're talking about moving away from February 1st, 2nd, or 3rd and trying to reschedule the whole retreat.
Well, you didn't mention his availability at other dates.
And I haven't explored that, to be honest with you. I've been looking at the 2nd and 3rd.
So George?
You've got the information, or you'll have the information in terms of the background and what he's put together. For me, I don't think I'd want to reschedule the retreat, and I think this would be a piece of the overall discussion for the retreat. So I think it's timely. I would be willing to try, what's it called,
Webinar, it's,
webinar.
Yeah.
I mean, we always have PowerPoints anyway, and we'll still have the opportunity to ask questions and have a dialogue. It won't be face-to-face, but I think the timing is such that I would support that. And frankly, I would like to just see how this webinar really works for future opportunities. And we'll certainly save some money in terms of not having to bring Ben back down in a later date. I'm sure it's going to be a lot less expensive for us to do it this way. So I would support this. I think it's a good experiment, and I think we'll still have the opportunity to ask any questions that need to be asked.
Well, yeah, I'd support it as well. I will note that we have our EOTC subcommittee that day, and all of that is, how does that affect that schedule? I know that's a 1 o'clock meeting. I don't know if we can work before or after that. That was scheduled for the 1st.
we're flexible for that whole day, actually, if the board is, so we could do it in the morning also. If we wanted to, say, do it at 10 o'clock in the morning, I don't know if that works for, we didn't have anything on our calendars for you during that time.
Is it a 4-hour session, you
No,
said?
we're thinking 2 hours for presentation, and it'd probably go on for about 2.5 hours, depending on the questions.
Well, I would just, if we do this, I'd like it later. You know, if we do this, it's for me, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday meetings, the next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, including driving to Denver. Last weekend was somewhat brutal, so I don't, whatever the direction of the board is, I'm there, but just a little bit later than 10 maybe.
So you're saying afternoon, Jack, or?
Well, we want to stay not conflicting with the subcommittee. I guess that's the EOTC subcommittee, Rob?
Correct.
What time is that?
That's the,
That's what was flashed to me via, however, that Outlook online stuff.
yeah, and that's
Calendar
actually
stuff
our
works.
internal prep meeting, and
That's
so that's
internal.
probably one that we could move pretty easily.
Yeah.
So why don't we see if we can move that?
And we can move that to the
That's
morning.
the direction of the board. I know, Michael, you haven't had a chance to weigh in, but we could move that and make it work in the afternoon, so to accommodate some of Jack's concerns.
Yeah, 1 o'clock, I don't want to interfere with lunch, so,
We could also bring in lunch and do it from lunch to 2, if that works better for you.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is either you have your morning free, or you commit one way or the other. It's a shame to ruin both.
so let's do 1 o'clock.
Yeah, 1 o'clock
There for you.
is fine with me,
Okay.
as long as you can. And I'm disappointed that he can't show up. That's too bad, but we'll see how it works. And as long as we get all that material ahead of time and get some idea of where he's going with his talk, that would be good.
The section leaders are doing a webinar with him tomorrow morning, actually, and so we'll have a good sense of where that narrative is going. We're going to have an opportunity to weigh in on that, and then we should have materials Thursday or Friday this week. So we're working on a folder for you now.
So the overall then, how does that change the complexion of our retreat?
Well, what I'd anticipate then is that will save us approximately, what I'd planned is about 2.5 hours in the afternoon on Thursday. And so we'll be able, I think we'll just take what we're going to do then on Friday, do some of that Thursday afternoon, and we should be able to get out early on Friday, probably around 2:30 or 3 o'clock.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, seems kind of drawn out, but
It is to have it over the 3 days. I just thought there was value, and we had this opportunity for Ben to have some interaction with you.
okay. Tell Ben the pressure's on. Yes to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's even more timely knowing that that staff is going to be looking at the webinar with him tomorrow. So I think that's So they'll be up to speed, and when they interact with us during the retreat, we'll all have the same information, which would be good. And then for the ELTC, it's just us three and maybe Tom Hogan, right? So maybe we can meet 11:30 or 12, have a lunch meeting or something like that.
Would that work for you, Ron?
Yeah, that works fine.
All right, well, I'll let Susan know, and we'll go ahead and work on that schedule, and on next Tuesday's work session, I'll have a revised and almost final agenda, subject to your guys' approval.
And Brian Pettit's in on that meeting too.
So Cindy was going to be here for something on...
Yeah, so another future agenda, I guess, item.
Ready?
Yep. And this was a request that actually George had made for us to look at now that the deadline for the Bureau of Land Management Resource Management Plan comments has been extended. That gives us some opportunity to maybe do some education and explanation of our comments, not changes, but for example around the wildlife issues. And so Cindy's had some discussions with Kevin Wright about the possibility of us facilitating really a meeting in the Basalt area to explain some of our comments. And Cindy, may I hand it over to you?
Right, yeah, George and I had talked, and you had said, let's bring it back and see if the board wants to do this. And there's an opportunity between February 6th and the 15th, it looks like on all of our calendars, to have probably an evening meeting, if we'd like, down in the Mid-Valley, Basalt area, purpose of which, and George, you can help me out here, but the purpose of which really is to educate more about why we came up with the decision points we came up with in our recommendations to the BLM on their resource management plan, specifically concentrating on the wildlife, because we've gotten a lot of feedback, as I'm sure all of you have, on trail closures for winter and on those decisions that we've made around some of the Division of Wildlife comments that came to us. So we wanted to ask Kevin and some of his group to maybe do a little educational session to explain why these are important decisions from a wildlife perspective, and then also kind of promote, if you will, the concept of our special management plans for each one of the parcels that we've outlined in our memo, which were basically the Crown, Light Hill, and Albany Kittle, to have a more specific management plan look in terms of seasonal closures perhaps, recreational impacts, various types of recreation, and how all those things work together. Very much like the BLM had initiated originally on the Crown, but it stalled out at some point and needs to come back with a more thorough discussion. So that was the idea, and I'll just let it go from there.
Rob? Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I missed something here. So the BLM has again extended their comment period?
The day
Somehow I missed that.
4:15, the day they were due.
The day they were due, they extended the comment period to what date?
February 27th.
February,
Something.
so a month and a week or so.
Yeah.
And our plan with this, just so I'm gearing this towards the right direction, our plan with this is to explain our comments to the general public and then potentially make slight additions or tweaks to the draft, to the plan that we've already written, or the comments that we've already noted.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
My idea was, I saw this as an opportunity since BLM has extended their deadline. And because we had so much feedback on the part of the plan that dealt specifically with wildlife issues and winter closures, I felt it was an opportunity for us with the DOW to provide information to the community. The DOW, we've had the opportunity, the pleasure to see presentations in the past with mapping, with their studies, but the public really has not had that opportunity to really be as educated as we are. So for the DOW to be able to show mapping, to go over the studies that they have, I think it's just would at least give the DOW an opportunity to explain their proposals in the draft, and also an opportunity for us to explain why we're supportive of that. And it gives us the opportunity to encourage the citizens to continue to provide direct feedback to the BLM, hopefully to support our concepts of a hybrid option and to support our concept of BLM continuing to do sub-area management plans. So that was the premise. I really didn't see that we would have to have staff make any additions or deletions to the comments already made. So that was the thought.
Let me just, O'Brien?
Yes.
We have you scheduled at 2. We're going to wrap this up very shortly, and thank you for being here. We'll wrap it up shortly. So, well, how's the board feel to have that meeting, Jack?
I think it's reasonable to network again further with the public, but I would just be careful for what you ask for or what might be asked for, as we're stating now that we feel that we're up to speed, we've networked, we've had public meetings, here and down in Mid-Valley, and got feedback from other jurisdictions. But then when you go to a meeting, and especially about the issue that we were communicated with rather thoroughly, Light Hill and Albany Kittle Trails, I believe the public's going to say, hell no, we don't want you to support that. No matter how much we want to educate, there'll be a conflict. And I'm not worried, I'm not concerned about quote-unquote conflicts, but expectations by the public. Because I don't feel that I am in a position to amend our comments. I think our comments were right on, well thought out, and we took a long time. I mean, this process has been at least 3 years, I think, now. I don't know if total 3 years, but here we are. And so there's a little bit of a concern about what the public is going to demand and where we'll end up.
So, it is important how we couch the meeting, whether it's an informational meeting, purely informational, or it's some kind of other action meeting of some sort. So, because people might, as Jack said, might come with the expectations that is actually about debating our choices, and I think all of us are firm in those choices. There might be information that we have not heard that there's that possibility from trail users, but I don't see it being anything earth-shattering, quite frankly. So I'd be interested in having an informational meeting and leave it at that, and bring the resources that we've used. Our relationship with the DOW is particularly good, it seems to me, and we should encourage them to reach out through us, and that'd be good. So I guess it's just a question of scheduling it then, is that right?
Yeah, I checked with Kevin, since he would be our main information, and he is available February 6th through the 8th, and then again on the 13th, 14th, or 15th. So we'll just need to work with your schedule as to what evening would work best for you in the Mid-Valley. Are there any dates maybe that we should steer away from during that time? Or
I can't think of any other. So we're talking maybe the same location, the Eagle County Annex is Mid-Valley?
we potentially could do that. I was hoping to maybe even be in Basalt, because that's where a lot of people
What are
live.
the ranges? I'm sorry.
February 6th through the 8th, 6th, 7th, or 8th, and then again the 13th, 14th, or 15th.
I would cross the 7th off.
Okay.
It's the caucus state for Colorado.
Okay.
For the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And I would like to, Michael, I'd like to suggest not that second or the first full week. We have meetings the 7th and 8th, and then Rachel and I are be driving to Denver, and the 9th and 10th we're out of town, so it's already a tough week.
So the following week,
The following week, I'm personally good. We have a Tuesday meeting. I don't know what our agendas are like, but however we can fit it in. And I would request, my last comment is that clearly that we work with Kevin about the structure of this meeting, as Michael articulated. This is informational, and we certainly want to help people understand the DOW's position and our support thereof.
So 13th, 14th, or 15th are the dates that Kevin's available that next week, so.
George?
Again, city, can we see if and when the town hall basalt would be available? Because that would be the best place. The only place basalt to really hold a large meeting, but the library closes at 7, so that's a problem. So it'd have to be town hall, unless we want to do it early. But I think it should be a late, early evening meeting so most people can attend after work.
So you think 5:30 or 6? Or?
Maybe 6, give people a chance to land and have a quick bite if they want something.
Yeah.
We'll work on that schedule.
And then, of course, if town hall is not available, then we'd have to look at Eagle County. But I think basalt would be ideal, but if the Eagle County building would still work, it's not that big a ride from basalt to Eagle County building.
And Tuesday the 15th, Tuesday the 14th, our meeting is over at 5. That would give us a chance still to get down Valley if that day works for the town.
Okay, Cindy?
Thank you.
Thanks.
So, it's about 2:05, and we have an interview scheduled with Ryan Jarvis, who is applying for the conflict committee pool. John? Brian, why don't you come forward to the desk up here? Thank you for being here.
Yeah,
and thank you for waiting.
Yeah, the conflict committee pool is a pool of citizens appointed by the board with a minimum membership of 9, a maximum of 15. Currently, we are at 6, so we have 3 vacancies to fill to get us up to the minimum. And the conflict of interest committee takes complaints from citizens about accusations of our elected officials, either current or past, acting in a way that presents a conflict of interest, where there are accusations of using their elected position for personal gain. When the Conflict of Interest Committee receives a complaint, they have 15 days to respond, and they are required to use the commercial rules of the American Arbitration Association in order to make a determination as to whether a conflict of interest exists. This committee has never been called into place in my first year. My understanding is it has been a number of years since this committee has been asked to consider any accusations of conflict of interest. So it is not a super active committee at this point.
So, Ryan, it sounds like the ideal committee to be on. To put it on your resume, and yet you don't have to attend any meeting. But circumstances change, of course. So we appreciate you being here. You said, I think in your application, that you had a commitment to community participation. Mm-hmm. Is that a fair statement of why you're applying for this?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's important for anyone to give back to the community, and that is one of the driving reasons why I volunteered for this. I'm relatively new to town, and I've been trying to get involved, and I saw this as a perfect opportunity to get my foot in the door and get involved.
Great. Any questions for Ryan from the other board members? Jack?
So here you've applied for a very serious board, thankfully, as John indicated. The board hasn't met, but in my, now starting my 12th year, one time, and that was when a developer accused 3 of us commissioners of conflict of interest. I had not even sat on the board, it was just immediate. Peter Drosty, and it was, a decades-long battle, so he wanted to stick it to us and try to have a few of us recused. So obviously it was unanimous that there was no conflicts. The reason why I was called on the carpet there is because during the campaign, my first run at being a commissioner in 2000, I was asked a question and said, well, we've got to rely on the land use code to determine the outcome of so-and-so. So that's how frivolous it was. Okay, so we have conflict of interest. Would you define conflict of interest for us?
Yeah, for I think an elected official or any policymaker, it's when they have a duty to do what's in the best interest of the people that put them in office or the people they serve if they're not an elected official. And any time that their ability to serve the public is impinged upon, or because they're searching for or going after self-serving interests, or even if the two the public interest and their interest seem to be consistent on an issue, it also calls into question just the legitimacy of the whole process. So those are the two types of conflict of interest I would foresee. Again, it might be defined in the code that I guess the conflict of interest is, but those are the two I would see.
Yeah, we have actually a code of conduct which deals with this issue. I'm not sure by your definition if in fact you touched on this, but there's not only a direct conflict, which really by definition relates to economic interests, but there's also another element that we're sensitive of, perception of conflict of interest, and so that's equally important. Now, I would hope, by the language here, you state the second reason why applying, governments lose all credibility among constituents when policymakers stop working solely in the best interest of the community, instead use their government position to pursue personal interests. Well, that's a pretty strong statement. I hope you haven't seen that, because in my time I haven't seen that by either elected or appointed or staff ever. And hopefully Michael's correct. You don't have much of a chance to meet except at our annual picnic.
So, Rob,
It looks through your resume here, you graduated from law school in May of last year.
Yes.
And then there's kind of a gap between that and December, where you took a position with a law firm down in Glenwood Springs, sometime in there moving to the Aspen Airport Business Center to live. What brought you to this community, and what did you do after graduation between then and working in December?
Yeah, so I guess that's two questions. First of all, what brought me here is my girlfriend, my long-term girlfriend, who'll be moving here in May, has family here, and she's back in Seattle, but she lived here and worked here before she moved to Seattle with me. And I actually spent the summer after undergraduate and before law school, I worked for the city's Parks Department. It was my first experience here, and as you all know, it's absolutely gorgeous here and a lot of fun stuff to do. And my girlfriend and I decided that we would like to make it our home, so that's why I moved here. As to your other question of what I did, as you probably have heard, the job market's a little tough out there. So I graduated, I took the bar in July, passed the bar, and then after a short vacation, I moved here in September and started my job search. I volunteered for the city attorney's office and did a little bit of work for them while still looking for a job, and then the December job was the first job I got.
Welcome to the community.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further questions for Ryan?
No, just thank you for applying and welcome. And
So, Ryan, there are some openings, and we'll probably continue the interview process, but we'll let you know, I guess, via mail. Is that how we typically do it?
Yeah.
Via mail?
Yes, and so Ryan, what will typically happen is we'll have the interview, and then at a later date, the board will have an opportunity to discuss your application and make appointment, and then staff will contact you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time, Ryan.
Thanks for your interest. Michael, may I ask John a question?
Yes.
John, apparently 4 members are up for renewal in April of 12. Have we gotten any feedback about continuing interest?
Not that I'm aware of, Jack, but let me
a little
check
early,
in with
but-
Charlotte and see if she's heard from any of them.
So April, what do we send requests for renewal or awareness? 2 months, 1 month ahead? Any idea?
I do know we are contacting folks ahead. I do not know exactly how far ahead of time, Jack. That's on the tickler file right now, but we do contact folks who are up for renewal, explain the new reapplication process, and ask them to submit.
Well, I'm hoping it's maybe a little more, at least than a month, because, if in fact we're going to interview, whatever, if we go that far, people have a chance to get on the agenda.
So it's 2:15, so we're right on schedule. Have we covered future agendas then?
Well, we covered the 2 future agenda items I wanted to bring to your attention, but I don't think we've asked the board if...
Board, are there any questions about future agendas?
I would note as the board's going through that on February 7th, we do have a brown bag lunch scheduled during the airport master plan.
Well, I don't hear any questions from the board, so we're way ahead of schedule.
Had to go for a coffee or something early.
Well, actually, we're ready to deal.
Yeah, we still have open discussion items.
We do?
Yeah, I can cover more, and the
Okay,
the
let's do
board
that.
may have some open discussion
Okay.
items too that they want to bring up. Just real quickly, you all had received a letter, and this has already been in your boxes, but I'll hand out a copy for your reference. And this is, Jack, you had brought this letter up last week, not weekend, from Skip Harrington, who is concerned about some cows that are being pastured by Bill Fales on open space and trails property near Thompson Creek. I did spend quite a bit of time on the phone with Skip, really understanding his concerns, and during that discussion, I committed to him to kind of bring back a little bit of our discussion to you, and in essence, what his concerns really are. And his concerns really are around concerns about whether the county has any liability if the cows are leaving that open space and trails property and going up onto Highway 133. And we had a brief discussion about open range laws. He remains concerned and wants to be sure that you all are aware that from time to time, during low water seasons, cows are getting through their water breaks and are fencing on that property to get down to the Crystal. They're crossing, getting up on Thompson Road and going up onto 133. Not necessarily a regular event, but it's happened in the past, and there's concern that it could continue to happen. In my discussions with Open Space and Trails in the attorney's office, this does not appear to be a liability concern precisely because of the open range laws in Colorado. And so his concern, even though he lists quite a few, and his letter was really centered on you all being aware and having an opportunity to ask appropriate questions of John Ely in the future if you feel it's necessary, about whether there's any undue liability to use a public entity. Right now, staff's analysis is that there's not.
So any questions for John? Jack?
I appreciate Mr. Harutin.
Harrington?
That's a Jack pronunciation. Bringing this to our attention, just we'd like to have feedback. I'm wondering, have we also been in contact, manager's office or open space, with Bill Fales?
Absolutely. We as soon as we got this letter, I did visit with Open Space and Trails staff, and they did contact Bill again. He had offered to be here. We didn't think as necessary unless you have additional questions or concerns that you want to address concerning this situation. But certainly, shared the concerns and wanted to make sure that he was taking whatever steps are necessary. Most of the property is currently fenced off with an electric fence, but there are water breaks again for the cows to get down to the water. And that electric fence is to protect the riparian area along the river there. So,
yeah, I would, and I appreciate the circle, as it were, of communication. I would hope, I guess I would get John Ely, his feedback on this, but we ought to somehow, I don't know if we should put this in writing or something. There's a concern about liability here, and John has an opinion. We know where John is at. On the other hand, I don't know if it's necessary to document what we found out. And that has to be on our attorney's opinion as to verbal is good enough. I feel at least a question here because of the fact a cow gets on the road. Yeah, well, a lawsuit is pretty easy. If Bill fails, us, everyone. I don't know how to protect ourselves. And in fact, we need to, I do understand open range law, but it gets pretty tough when someone gets in an accident, regardless of what the law is. So I don't know how to approach it.
So how's the board feel? Do we, and Jack, are you talking about responding directly to Skip? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, and I'm even at loss because of the John Ely stance, that we know so well. I just want to make sure that John feels that in the communications that John Peacock is aware and has shared with us, that we've gone as far as we can. That's the key.
well, what I would suggest then, if you don't mind, Michael, what I'd suggest is that we go ahead and schedule some time during a future exec for advice from John on these types of issues to the board.
Yeah, that would be reasonable.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. But I think a letter to Skip saying, we're looking into this. We're talking to our attorney. We're talking. Really fundamentally for me though, the issue is about neighborhood harmony and the ability of neighbors to seek remedy from other neighbors, and not rely on the letter of the law. And that. You think the market would work in this because the loss of a full-grown steer is a lot of money, much less a number of them. And so you think Bill Fales would, in essence, take care of his investments and make sure they don't wander, just for his own benefit. But, and I think, we have to keep our eyes on that we actually aren't the solution to most of these things. The commissioners, we do have a connection to open space and trails, but somehow Bill and Skip have to get together themselves, or the homeowners association, to develop a plan for a neighborhood that's free from ranging cattle, and Bill's cattle are protected from any hazards. So that's the direction I'd like to see us going. But I think we should have a discussion with Johnny. Yes, George?
And the only reason we're really in this discussion is because Bill is leasing land owned by open space, in essence owned by the county. And
That's
if
correct.
it wasn't for that factor, then we wouldn't be involved at all.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I am out of open discussion items.
Okay. Any open discussions on the part of the board? Jack?
I'm looking to make sure everyone else is up to bat first. Several things, quite frankly. We went to CCI, Rachel and I, this weekend, and a couple things came up. One, each of us commissioners are requested to fill out the 2012 Colorado Issues Survey. It's relative to NACO and federal issues. And I'd like to have this passed to John where he could copy it for the rest. I have my own copy. And we're allowed, each individual commissioner, of course, to fill this out. I would like to suggest, like we did last year, that we actually make a little agenda time to, review it, come in here and see if we can at least, as a board, get on the same page for, say, I think it asks us for 6 federal issues, so maybe 3 or 4 we can really have a strong voice, and then flexibility, and wherever we land, certainly. So that's my request, that we do have maybe 15 minutes or something here to touch base on this. And the date is due February 3rd. So that's the tough part. Here we show up and then they want us to blink, pretty quickly. So maybe next week if we can open discussion, even whatever, if it works for the chair and our manager. The second thing, Rachel and I thought we would bring this to the board's attention. Under the General Government Steering Committee, there's a bill, Senate Bill 12-30, about public trustee and foreclosure sales. It has some, it's directly related to both the county organization and, of course, the people we serve. I mean, we're all sensing that, it's pretty tough out there, and we'd like to find the right balance between all this. So I would like to request Tom Oken to look at this bill and give us some feedback. It's, again, Senate Bill 12. Of course, they always put the date first. It's Senate Bill 30. And it's the public trustee and foreclosure sales bill. That way, we'll have some direct feedback. Rachel and I can typically handle whatever comes before our desk, but this seemed like important to get staff's feedback, our county treasurers, because he deals with this stuff. An email that we as a board received relative to Ted Kusevic's property and the bridge. We got a copy of the last resolution in 2006 when there were some amendments to his land use approvals. That was shared with us. John, would you have any feedback why that was shared with us?
Why-
You're familiar with that
Why the
email?
was
Yeah,
was
with that reso? Point of information?
I think it was a point of information because we've been moving forward, as the board's aware, we've been moving forward on a pretty tight timeline right now to consider placement of the bridge on that Brush Creek Trail. And we've held some public information meetings to get some feedback about whether we would use the large span of the old Maroon Creek Bridge or whether we would go with a prefab bridge similar in design to what's up near the roundabout. We had just completed, actually, that public input process when representatives from Mr. Kutzbos contacted Open Space and Trails and suggested that they may be willing to enter into a discussion about either giving us an easement to put a shorter span in closer, which would be a significant cost savings to the county. I think there's also even some discussion about, does that make sense, or does it make sense to keep the current trail alignment? What their concern is, and what's bringing this to the table, is that they have vested land use approvals that are preparing to expire, and so I think they are wanting, at a future time to approach the board. There's been no formal application for this or discussion about this to have a discussion about extending those vesting rights. And one of the things that they put on the table is allowing us an easement to either move that bridge closer in or keep our current trail alignment. I think because we've been working on such a short time frame, and this is going to be a compressed discussion, you were presented this information just so that you knew what was going on, and it was also discussed in a public meeting with the Open Space and Trails Board. So we wanted to be sure that in case you got questions about it or such, you were aware of what was going on, which is why you got the distribution of information that you got. I went ahead and forwarded on an email that was sent to me by Open Space and Trails staff. Staff is still in discussions. I mean, obviously, we cannot make any commitments about extension of vesting on land use and return, and so we're having discussions about how those discussions need to be sequenced so that we can work out that possibility. And so we don't have an update right now beyond that, other than to say we know that we're on a compressed timeline. Really, the only way to make consideration of this work would be to have an extension for us to be able to use the existing trail alignment for a longer period of time while the board goes through its due process of considering any requests that may come forward for vesting. And that's where the discussion's at, to my knowledge. I don't know if there's been any new developments this morning or this afternoon.
Just to fill in, I did attend that public feedback session in Somass Village, and there were several people there, and a real plus, a couple individuals who took this to heart because of the renditions, and staff did a good job with being available for feedback, etc. Plus, I had some previous information that literally showed lot lines, etc., and I was in conjunction with staff and the information here. We really impressed upon a couple of these individuals that this is a no-win situation, whether it's a new long-span bridge or the existing Maroon Creek. It's going to highly impact the corridor, yes, but more importantly, the land use approvals for Ted Kutsabas. And a couple individuals did make contact with him because we were stalled, as it were. He hadn't got a hold of Dale or myself, and so we got his attention. He is working with a land use consultant in conjunction with Dale, and I think the message we need to send is exactly what you said, John. Okay, we're absolutely willing to look at this issue and work on a solution, but clearly we are under a timeline of pressure here because of the opening of the trail. So I would certainly, on behalf of the board, hope that we can get a message, through John, a message to Dale, because I do not believe he wants to talk to me anymore because I might be a decision maker, and that's fair. Let's get this thing ironed out in an appropriate amount of time before we spend extra money planning on an undesirable outcome for everyone. So, board, is that okay if John just sends that little extra message from the board? Because we have no idea about particulars, we're not weighing in on anything, but there is a time constraint here that we take serious because of Ted's direction to us that the trail is closed. That's the bottom line.
So, Jack, when you say, who do you want John to talk to?
Dale, because he's in communication with their land use planner. Just another little reinforcing nudge from the board. Yes, we would like to work together, and timelines are critical.
Do you want to send that kind of message, board, that we'd like to work together?
I mean, it's obvious.
Why would we send that message, Michael?
Well, I'm just kidding. It sounds like a very good message to give to Dale, so he can transmit it to Ted. And I know Dale is working hard on it anyway, so we're aware of it.
Yeah, and right now, if I could, working together really means getting an extension so that there is time for you guys to consider this other request, which needs to be done independently of any extension or what have you. So that's really what the working together is, but that you're open to that consideration, I think, is really the message at this point as far as working together.
Yeah. Good.
Okay.
Any other open discussion?
Yeah, I have one other question. We had in our box, at least I did in mine, has anyone seen this? Total locally assessed personal property values, revenue and percentages 2010. And I certainly wasn't 2011 because assessed valuation is $3+ billion, and we know that's not valid. But why was this, did someone request this? So I could...
Jack, I apologize. I didn't see that in the distribution folder for you guys, so I do not...
I mean, this is something that...
Did all of you receive that?
Yeah, this is something Rachel and I deal with on an annual basis at CCI about the personal property tax exemption, relative to personal property and also business property. But basically, what happens at the state is annually certain individuals submit this kind of legislation to do away with it, and it's a very important issue for local government in that it's a significant portion of revenues, our revenue stream. So, give and take. The doing away of this would be a serious problem for counties throughout the state. Rob, I'm sure you're sensitive to this relative to tax levels, etc. And I can't say that I know of any happy ground, but what is proposed annually is basically do away with it, and that's not a good thing. So our stance, Rachel and I, represent that we oppose this because of the local impacts. So maybe that just came forth. Maybe Rachel asked the sharing. I don't think I did, but golly, I don't remember ever.
But usually I would see those if they came through, so we'll have to track down where that came from. I apologize, I don't know.
Yeah, no problem. That's it for me. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Okay, any other board member comment, open discussion? Seeing none, I'm not sure what we're going to do. We're scheduled at 3:15 for a special meeting, the executive session.
I believe you can call that meeting early, Michael. I have sent up an email, I haven't heard back yet to see if John is back from Carbondale, but what I'd suggest is maybe taking a break till 3 o'clock. Let's see if John is back and we can go into our special meeting and executive session at that time.
Does that sound good, George?
Yeah, I'm wondering, should we call a special meeting now, just so grassroots doesn't have to hang out and come back?
Let's see, what is that's the end of our day at the end of the executive session. So let's call a special meeting now. Is there a motion?
I'd like to move for a special meeting for the, if I can find my gun, purposes of an exec session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Do we have to say why we're going into exec session for grassroots?
When you go in,
I just thought maybe when we go in, but may I just to make it simple, for the purposes as advertised, it currently is for the Aspen Hydro Project, water court applications, Mesa Land Trust, participation. How do you say participation? How do you say participation? Yeah, okay, good, Jack. For an amicus brief.
That's RS 24-6-4024B.
I accept the friendly amendment.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Participation.
Thank you, Mike.
I think John will be back.
So we'll convene at 3 o'clock.
CCI information.